we're looking at generative AI, you always go back to not only how do you limit the impact of an adoption of a product, but also the larger question of should you adopt this? And then if you adopt it, how do you adopt it? And then the third part, how do you create a certain malleability with your approach to recognize that there's a lot of future considerations that are going to kind of shift the ground underneath you? And to unpack that a little bit, what I'm getting at is a mistake that a lot of smaller businesses make is they think, wait a minute, I can learn this concept. I can go to a seminar on tech ethics, and therefore, I'm good. I'm good for the rest, of eternity. When in fact, this is a rapidly changing area. So it's kind of like the idea that we need to think more about thinking, right? We need to strengthen our ethical muscle as opposed to learning a concept one day and then thinking that that is a set it and forget it type of idea. The main part that I always come back to is we need to instill and incentivize a culture of questioning. That tends to be the biggest issues when we think about tech ethics. You want to have a climate within the workplace that allows, doesn't penalize individuals to bring up different scenarios about how a technology could be used. And that's why in areas like responsible AI, you have the concept of red teaming, right? Of just kind of walking through these scenarios that can be very, very beneficial. So that's what I would always kind of come back to. What I also recommend, though, is having a sense of humility over this topic. I think one of the misconceptions that happens around tech ethics or responsible innovation is that it seems like a burden placed on an individual to say, wait a minute, now I'm this incredible innovator and you're telling me I need to be an ethicist, right? That can seem like too much because one individual only has so much time in the day. They can only read so many books. They have their own kind of lived experience that is going to kind of limit their overall kind of viewpoint. So what I always recommend is the importance of having a strong team or other advisors or other individuals that can offer that insight and that advice. In other words, every innovator, every person at a business has their blind spots. The important part is to recognize that we have blind spots and to also bring in other people who bring in their proverbial flashlight to shine a light on that blind spot. Therefore, you have a better kind of roadmap to where your future needs to head. One of the biggest mistakes I've always seen businesses make with emerging technologies is chasing the hype cycle. What is very difficult for every business is to understand where is the future headed. For example, recently, it was widely promoted that a lot more people would start kind of going into the metaverse, and you had a lot of businesses kind of transitioning into that, but that obviously has not gone as expected. So you always have this difficulty for every business to determine where is the future headed. And what's complex about this is that every mainstream idea originally starts on the fringe. It starts with early adopters. It starts with all these promises and then probably detractors. However, not every issue or product or idea that's on the fringe will become mainstream. So a business has to determine and frankly see through the hype cycle, see through who has an invested interest in what they are advocating for or what they're predicting is going to happen or what should happen, and the practicalities for that business. And that's the topic that I always discuss. with a lot of businesses, and always really, really hard to determine, because people always want to be ahead of the curve. But that's also going to take a lot of homework, and also take a lot of kind of reading between the lines about what will really happen. It would really behoove you to not just take a founder. If you're talking to, let's say, a startup, you have so many startups that are getting involved in this. The danger for these smaller businesses is that sometimes these startups aren't always thinking about the larger ramifications. Therefore, a business could really find themselves in hot water if they start adopting tools that are not recognizing the significant ethical and legal ramifications of this work. So I would advise for all those businesses to adequately do their homework, but also take a lot of the founders with a grain of salt, recognizing that it would be beneficial for those smaller businesses to understand the implications of this work and to seek out additional kind of counsel for that. So what I've seen involved in a lot of startups and smaller businesses is that there is a lot more discussions that these individuals who want to get more exposed to these issues can get involved with. There's panel discussions, community kind of activities, great books and articles and videos to read. So what I would always recommend is recognizing that there are some kind of drawbacks or potential drawbacks with these emerging technologies like generative AI. So it really is essential that all of these smaller businesses do their adequate homework. But I'll also say that you never want to scare away innovation. So I think that the beauty, and what my kind of recommendation always comes down to, is the real end goal is how can we have responsible innovation, not how do we limit innovation, right? So responsible innovation is going to be more positive because it's going to have a better kind of outcome for the individuals utilizing that. It's going to have lowered kind of legal risk because it's thinking about that responsibility. It's thinking about the ethics, and it's thinking about the kind of legal framework that's intersecting with these emerging technologies. I wish if I could do my career over again or my life over again, I would have, been more assertive because what's interesting around the rise of social media is that the typical media narrative is that, okay, we once were blind, but now we see type of redemption story, that we all thought that social media would just go off without a hitch, lead to the spreading of democracy. And that's not where we landed. But the truth of the matter is, throughout this entire time, that was not the case. You always had people on the fringe or on the side, outside of the tech industry, who were talking at conferences, writing books, shaking their tiny fist in the air to say, we could do better. This is significant about what we're creating. Here are the different ways that this could go sideways. This is really important in life. Therefore, we don't want it to go sideways. So if I was doing my career over again, I definitely would have been involved even earlier on, right? So I have been involved for over a decade, and did a bunch of writing and speaking and consulting to kind of grow a career in this space. But if I did it again, I would do it a little earlier and probably more forcefully to try to right the ship, because right now you effectively have a lot of people who are pointing out why the Titanic sank, so to speak. But you also had a lot of people early on who could have prevented the Titanic from hitting the iceberg.